Hi, everybody. Good morning. It's 10 o'clock, so let's get started. I'm Chasi Rifkin, and I represent mikvah.org. Today, we're going to talk about the natural cycles we have each month in our relationship. Dr. Gross will help us find the language of connection even during the times of Niddah. Dr. Gross is a licensed marriage and family therapist in private practice in Brooklyn. She's a graduate of UCLA and a doctorate in marriage and family therapy. In addition to her private practice, Dr. Gross consults for a school for special needs children and a mother support group for parents of special needs children for over 6 years. Dr. Gross has consulted extensively with Jewish community schools in Los Angeles on a wide range of issues facing children and adolescents, and serves as a senior therapist at the Chabad Drug Rehab Inpatient Treatment Center in Los Angeles. Dr. Gross has lectured extensively on a variety of topics relating to relationships, parenting, and mental health. She's a certified anxiety and trauma therapist with a specialty in addiction treatment. She speaks English, German, Hebrew, and Yiddish. She's licensed in multiple states, and she sees clients in person and over Zoom. Today, Dr. Gross will be addressing, as I said in the beginning, maintaining a connection, maintaining closeness during the times of Niddah. So thank you, Mrs. Dr. Gross, for being here today. For questions and answers, you're welcome to put them in the chat, and whenever Dr. Gross pauses for questions, we will ask them. Okay, so you can either message it to everyone, you can message it to me, I'm Chasi Rifkin, and we will take it from there. So Dr. Gross, take it away.
Okay, thank you. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Chasi, okay, good. Okay, so thank you and good morning from snowy New York. And hello to wherever you are located right now. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever it is holding by you. Okay, so I'm sure you're familiar that there's many ways of people connecting in general, and in particular, a husband and a wife, because this is a very dear relationship to us. So there is a physical way of connecting. There is an emotional way of connecting. There's a way of connecting on a social level when you spend time with your husband. There's a connection over money. That's also a very important one. I know that's not the typical one they talk about in the 5 love languages, which is really 5 languages of connection, but they always play an important role in a relationship. So if you take any kind of variable of connection and you take it out for even temporarily, for a little bit of time, you are going to feel it. And that's actually a sign that there's a certain strength in the relationship and there's a certain connection. So it's not necessarily something negative. You know, people always think like, what's wrong with me? You know, no, there's nothing wrong with you. You are normal and you're feeling, and feelings are okay. It's okay to have those feelings. Okay, so the topic of today really addresses the fact that one variable, which is the physical part of the relationship, gets taken out during the times of Niddah. So how does that affect the relationship? Now, even though every woman is in the same boat, not everybody is going to weather the same storm when it comes to it. In other words, where everybody, when they become Niddah, that's it. They have to physically not have any contact, whether it's direct or indirect, with their husband. That's the halacha, and that's the way it goes. Okay. Now, not everybody reacts the same way because not everybody's in the same relationship. Not everybody is made of the same DNA. We have different ways of relating. We have different ways that are comfortable for us. We have different life experiences, and all those things and some more are actually going to affect how a person is going to experience the relationship. Okay, and again, I'm going to say a lot of them are maybe just a normal reaction, but normal doesn't feel always comfortable for us. Okay, just think to yourself, and I'm bringing it out just as an example, not as a problem, if the husband is sort of, I'm going to say sort of the main provider, okay, then what happens is if all of a sudden he wouldn't provide financially, you would feel it. And that would be a normal reaction. Yeah, the question is why, but we're not looking for this example purpose, just think of it. So having feelings is not something that anybody should run away from. And let me just tell you in general about feelings. What are feelings bichlal good for in a relationship or in the world, even if you're not supposedly in a relationship? Okay. What happens is feelings allow us to connect. Feelings protect us, and feelings basically tell us something is going on that needs my attention. Let's talk for a moment about connection. We know that very much with a parent to a child. And I was debating to do a little PowerPoint, and then I was told, and I'm perfectly okay with that because I see the point also, is that it's a short talk. I'm going to give some time at the end for questions. So, like, it's better to just stay with the speaker, so I was told. But I was going to show you a little short video that every time I see it, I have to tell you that I cringe. So if you want to Google it, you can Google it. It's called the still face experience. What happens is, I'm sorry, when you have a child, okay, they took a child, about 1-year-old baby, okay, and they had the mother kind of interact with the baby. You know what mothers do? They smile, they look at them, they're like so excited because they can do something. There's a lot of interaction going on. Now, we see the interaction on a level of action, meaning like I'm close to you, I'm not close to you, I'm sorry, I'm close to you, I'm smiling at you, I'm encouraging you, but all of that is a description of the feeling, which is the love. And after a minute, the mother is instructed to hold her face still, like no response at all. Within a split second, you see that the baby is starting to kind of do all the tricks she did before, like clap her hands, but because mommy gets excited when you clap your hands, and smile at mommy, but mommy is not reacting. I'm telling you, within a split second, the baby gets very upset and starts crying. And like I said, my heart goes out to them. I'm not only a mother, I'm a Bobby, they're very cute, these little ones. I don't like to see this type of thing. But I think what's important to know is there's a lot of interaction, of connection, and without feelings, you don't have those connections. So feelings are very important. On a different level, feelings can tell us that something is going on, like, oh my God, this really needs my attention. You're walking down the street, okay? And when you're walking down the street, you feel like something is not going right. Something is not like, feels creepy. Then get yourself going. Look, where's the closest type of, maybe there's a store, maybe there's a police station you can go into, and wait until you can get past the danger, whatever the danger is. So it's protecting, it's protective. Even sometimes, you have a feeling like, the teacher tells you like, yeah, your little brachala is reading, but she's not reading that well. And your gut feeling is something is going on. Okay. She probably needs some help, and you check it out. Well, not always going to be right. But the bottom line is feelings teach us things. Okay. They connect, they protect, they warn us of things. And there's a lot of good and warm feelings. So what happens when feelings are not addressed? When feelings are not addressed, and this is purely a brain function, okay, they get stuck. And they come out somehow a different way. So let's think of the brain. I'm going to make you a model of the brain. My fist is the model of the brain. I'm sure you've seen a ton of models of the brain, okay? And here is the lower functions of the brain, which is like eating and sleeping, when you're thirsty, when you're hungry, and so on. And in the middle part, here my thumb, it's on purpose to the inside. That's the emotional part of the brain. Everybody has it, okay? And the top part is right here. That's your executive functioning, where you make decisions, thinking things through, and so on. So what happens is when the emotional part of the brain gets processed, talks to the bottom part or the top part of the brain, then everything is sort of flowing. Nobody gets it perfect, but how do we do it? You know, we have a feeling and then we identify what we're feeling and trying to figure out what we do with that feeling. That doesn't change whether you're 2 years old, 20 years old, or 120 years old. This is kind of how the brain processes it. Now, if you don't do it, these feelings get stuck and they pile up. And I want you to know, you probably know people that no matter what you say to them, they're always kind of angry or have a chip on their shoulder or something like that, because they haven't processed their feelings properly. You know, you can go over, you can ask them, just, can you please pass me the salt? And they're like, what do you want from me? You know, like, nothing, I just wanted the salt. But they are angry a lot, okay? And that can apply for other feelings too. Sometimes people cover up their feelings and it doesn't even come out. So in a close relationship with your husband, all those things are going to come out the most. So it's really important that we work on that. And there are really no shortcuts or no tricks that you can do. But I'm going to give you the layout. I'm going to call it a formula of how do you process your feelings. Because when you process your feelings, you can have that connection. So the very first step, and it seems so simple and it seems so like, you know, what are you talking about? You know, identify your feelings. Now, yes, people can say, you know, like, come on, I'm not in kindergarten anymore. Okay, I'm done. Feelings come in many layers. A person can feel anxious on the top, but underneath they feel like, you know, maybe I'm feeling inadequate. I'm not feeling good about myself. Underneath they can feel fear. Underneath they can feel jealousy. Okay, underneath they can feel like, I don't know how to do this. So they're lacking a skill. There's many feelings that a person can have about the same event. And not only that, a person can have total opposite feelings about the same event. Just think of it. You know, you do a big new peula, okay? So you can be anxious because it's making you nervous. There's a lot of things that you have to do. You're going to speak on Zoom and, you know, all these different kinds of things. But at the same time, you're excited. This is a big peula, you know, I'm looking forward to it. There's going to be a lot of people. So there are opposite feelings that you can have at the same time, and they don't negate one another. So what do you do when you are just coming up with one feeling? It might be that's the only one that there is, okay? But when you're coming up with one feeling and you're thinking like, you know, okay, I listened to this talk, there's supposed to be more to it. Let me figure it out. A very helpful tool is to journal. Now, when I say journal, do not type on your computer. On the computer, an A and a B and a C and an F and a G, they're all the same way. You just go like this, you know? Writing down has a couple of advantages. Number one is it slows down your thinking. When you are slowing down your thinking, you can actually start to connect to what's going on within you. And that is a way to connect to the feelings and to see what's going on. Another thing to remember is that when you are writing down, when you write down an A, a B, a C, or different words, that's a different activity in the brain because it's a different letter. For those ones, I know handwriting right now is becoming sort of obsolete, but I want you to know it makes a big difference. Research tells us that people who are successful, they make a handwritten list, not a computer list. Because when there's something about writing it. I mean, neurologically, I can explain it to you, but we're not going to spend the time on it now. But there's something that makes you feel like you almost did it already. You almost feel accomplished, like it's done. Okay? Because it connects to a deeper level. And that is the same thing with journaling. Journal. If you don't have to do it every day, journal it a little bit, whatever comes to your mind. And it's probably more important that you do it for a couple of minutes more frequently in order to get to the bottom of it than one time and sitting there for 3 hours. That wears people out. Okay. And I just want to say a little bit when we talk about journaling, be careful when you're journaling, because if it's an evening that, let's say, you're going to go to the mikveh and your journaling is going to bring out a lot of different feelings, you're going to have to work that through before you go to the mikveh. So just use a little bit your discretion on in time-wise when it makes sense. It would be not any different example if your mother's coming to visit. I don't know, now it's Corona and whatever, but I'm just using it as an example. Your mother's coming to visit, like, if things are on your head about your feelings about, that you have about being a Niddah, then, give yourself the space. It's an act of self-respect. It's an act of self-care, and you can really take care of yourself. So let's go through some of those feelings that a person might have. And I just want to tell you that feelings are very individual. People can have all different kinds of feelings. So if I don't mention a feeling and you do have it, that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. If you have it, you have it. Okay, so there's no problem with that. And also, when it comes in terms of feelings, okay, it's important that you accept your feelings, which we're going to get to in a really in a second. So talking about the feelings, some people will actually feel relieved when they get their period, and then they're Niddah, oh my God, I get to sleep through the night. I don't want to be bothered with my husband, can go sleep early. I don't feel like I have to say yes, all different kinds of things. I don't even like that much being with my husband physically. So for me, it's a good period of time. Another person can feel like, you know what, I was from all my life, and I really hate not being allowed to have any physical touch with my husband, because I'm not doubting any mitzvahs, chas v'shalom, but like these feelings are just like, this is my husband, that's just the way I connect. Touch is a really important part in my life. It's really an important language of connection, and I'm feeling bad that I have those feelings, but the reality is I do. And on top of it, here I am a shlucha, and I am also teaching others about the mitzvah, and I'm supposed to be enthusiastic about it, and I'm supposed to, make them feel good when I myself have my doubts. And who am I supposed to talk to about this? So, and this is not uncommon. People can have those feelings. Just on a side note, in this talk, the mitzvah of Taras HaMishpacha is obviously something that we only start when a person gets married. So it's a little different. All the other mitzvahs, more or less, are all kind of incorporated in your life, whether you grew up from or you became from at some time. But it's kind of an all or none. You don't keep Shabbos different. Yes, you light more candles. I mean, when you get married, you have an additional candle, or with children, if this is the way you do it, this is your minhag. But I'm just saying, like, in general, it doesn't change. Kashrus doesn't change just because you get married. And the mitzvah of Taras HaMishpacha starts when you get married. So in the initial phase, you gotta give yourself some time to get used to it. But I don't think that the crowd over here is really this crowd, but you might be speaking with, new kales, or being a kala teacher. So yes, in the beginning, that's gonna need some time to adjust, and that's not unusual. This is really not kind of my focus of the talk right here. I'm more talking about people that are married, maybe 2, 3, 5, 6, 10 years, and kind of they're stuck in their feeling. Okay, so just keep that in mind. And also the type of marriage that I am addressing here is more or less where a husband and a wife are there for one another. Because unfortunately, the reality is there are some marriages where only one person gets it their way, one spouse it's very dominant, that one spouse has to have it their way, or else there's going to be consequences of whatever the nature is. That's more of an abusive marriage, and I'm not diagnosing anybody's marriage on anything. So I'm just saying that there's different ideas and rules for that. That is a whole different topic. So this is not really included right here. So let's come back to identifying your feelings. You try to identify them and you did your best. Okay, you identified them. There can be very opposite feelings. I only mentioned kind of like two directions. And the next step is really to accept those feelings. Now, acceptance sounds so simple, but in reality, we know that acceptance is really difficult. So what kind of steps can you do in order to accept the feelings? You know how we go, like, okay, so I don't like, being distant from my husband. It just doesn't feel good for me, but I shouldn't think like that. The second you go and you say, but, you are negating that you're not allowed to have those feelings. Are the feelings up to the value that you're living? No, but they're still your feelings. So the first step you do is you accept those feelings, meaning you can say to yourself, you know what? It's hard for me. When I become a Niddah, then I feel distant from my husband. Touch is really important for me. Okay, fine. I don't have to do everything physical, but at least holding hands or a hug sometimes. That would really make a difference to me. It can also be after you have a baby and I just want to hug. That's it, And we know that's not halachically, that's not on the radar. It's not going to happen. So accept those feelings. When I tell you accept those feelings, literally either write them down for yourself or say it to yourself. Yeah, I feel like I would need a hug now. And the next word, make it in capital 3 letters. Say and. Whatever you said to yourself before, okay, that had but, which means it negated your feeling. And this is difficult for me, even though, I'm from or I'm a shlucha or whatever else you tell yourself. You make it a more comprehensive picture. Because in life, what we want to do is we want to integrate. We're not throwing things away. The reality is that these feelings can teach us something and can help us grow. Like we say in psychology, and this is really in line with Hasidus, okay? We say we don't need to make the problem smaller. We need to make the person bigger. In other words, when you work through it, okay, you become a different person. And then, yes, the problem is going to look different. I'm obviously not talking about sometimes people make a problem out of something that actually maybe isn't a problem. Okay, that's not what I'm talking about. But everybody has their feelings and they're going to work through it. So coming back to it, write yourself down or say it to yourself what the feeling is, and you can add more. And this doesn't have to be something that you're doing in 10 minutes right after this talk, or maybe you're going to another talk or whatever. Give yourself some time to let it grow on you, because you're going to come up with more feelings, and the more integrated things are, the more you are going to be able to deal with it. Now, what do we do with all this information that I've provided for you? Basically, identify your feelings and then accept the feelings, whatever it is. When we think of connection, okay, we have to think like this. We have to think behavior comes on the top level, emotion comes right underneath, and on the bottom is the root of the problem. And when we get to the root of the problem, we can figure out whatever else has to go with it. So identifying and accepting what you are feeling will make space for you to figure out what's the problem. Okay, so the problem can be something from within you, the problem can be from something within the relationship. So if a person, for example, feels very distant from their husband during that time, a good exercise to do is when you are not in Niddah, sit down about the end of the day and make yourself notes on the little parts of connection that you had that day with your husband. Yeah, I text him and he texts me during the day. We ate dinner together. He called me when he was in the store. He asked me what I wanted, before we went to sleep. We, have a whole conversation of the day. It's maybe just 10 minutes, but it doesn't matter. All those different things. And sometimes, because everybody has a different structure, but sometimes when a person does this exercise, it's sort of like, I'm busy with the kids and my husband, he takes care of the money, or he runs Chabad or whatever, runs the Chabad house, or he's a Rebbe or whatever the husband does. And kind of like, nah, we don't eat dinner together most of the time because he's busy and I'm busy. And, I do the shopping and take care of the kids and he does his thing. And when you actually think about it more, or even put it pen to paper, you realize that, yes, you have those feelings, but when you put it all in the bigger picture, by end of day, the connection that you have with your husband, you're Baruch Hashem on a very good, both in the same place when it comes to the physical connection, and that makes life easier. But this is really not just your main connection. This is so dominant in your marriage that really the other things are kind of falling to the side, the other parts of connection. And what are the other parts of connection? It's basically the emotional connection. If you didn't notice, I have an accent, but because I grew up in Vienna, Austria, and the Jewish community, this all ties in, by the way, the Jewish community was pretty small. It was after the war, all survivors. And the frum community was even smaller. And my mother was the Kala teacher in Vienna for all those times. So it was always very exciting because the Kalas used to come to the house. And then, I finished high school, I went to seminary, and it was my turn to get married. And as my siblings, my sisters, I should say, I also learned with my mother. And that was always the big thing. I mean, yes, I'm married for almost 4 decades already. Things have evolved since, but that was always the big thing. During the times when you're in Niddah, that's really a time where you connect. And it's really a time where the emotional part of the relationship keeps on growing. Some things don't change over time. And it's still the same idea today. Yes, we're not the same people, and a lot of things have evolved. But really, when you sometimes sit down and take a step back and look at your relationship, not during the time when you're upset, during the time when things are working, you can see that, maybe that is part of what the root of the problem is for me, that I don't feel connected enough. And then you can figure out what you want to do with it. And I'm going to get into that in a second of what are some of the things that a person can do to connect more. But in order to connect more, you got to know what your problem is. I'm going to give a very different example, okay? A different example in terms of that is, a person actually, they feel very nervous during the times of Niddah. And I'm going to share some things. It's not about one particular person. It's about trends that I have seen. So I don't want anybody to think that, oh, okay, so she's talking about her clients. What happens is a person is very anxious, and as I speak more to them and I'm trying to find out more information, what it really turns out is they're actually feeling pretty good for the few days that they are having their period, but then when it starts to come in hefsek and bedikas and mikveh, it's just very stressful. And what it turns out is that they are very nervous because they're very meticulous about the mikveh, and they're very meticulous about Taharas HaMishpacha. And I know that none of you, that's not your position, to kind of diagnose anybody, but I mean, I don't think it's going to be a big surprise for you. But this is the mitzvah of mikveh and taharas hamishpacha is something that also people can struggle with OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder. And if somebody has, even if they don't have a house full of kids, they can be stressed because it's taking them a long time to prepare for mikveh. They're nervous about the bedikas and different things. Yeah, that's going to be a stressful time. That really doesn't have anything to do with the husband, so to speak. It has to do only with, the wife herself. That's actually good news, because if you know that this is where the problem lies, you can actually take care of it. So, for example, if this is the root of the problem, then I want you to know OCD is very treatable. So there's no reason to struggle and struggle and struggle. Yes, it takes work to take care of it. Nothing in life just goes like, with a snap of a finger, but it's a treatable thing. So I'm just giving very different examples because I can give you simple ideas, but people are complex. And to say that A leads to B leads to C, okay, so if you're anxious, you have OCD, obviously that doesn't make sense. Okay, or if you have those feelings of sadness, then okay, automatically there's a lack in the connection in your relationship. Sometimes what you need to learn is you need to learn to deal with that sadness. And on that note, I want to explain to you something. When you lose a variable in the relationship, then you're going to feel it. And what happens is there's two different types of loss. There's a loss that's a finite loss, and there's loss that is called an ambiguous loss. Now, a finite loss is a loss where whatever it's either chas v'shalom a person or a certain entity. Let's make it the phone, okay? I know you're not teenagers, but if you tell a teenager the phone is gone, life comes to an end, okay? So, but let's say the phone is not here. Okay, yes, we can replace it. Hopefully it was backed up and so on. But you're going to have feelings. You're going to have, oh my God, what happened with my pictures? My pictures weren't backed up, and I have all this important information and all the different stuff and whatever else comes with it, okay? But as you're moving forward, meaning it happened, let's say, on Tuesday, as time is passing, you will be more distant from the original event, and it's going to integrate in your life and hopefully become smaller. Now, I just want to say, because a finite loss can chas v'shalom be with a person also, and this is part, unfortunate, of our real life. This is not, I brought this for example purposes, this is not here to diminish the loss and how to integrate it. Grief and mourning is another whole story, and that's not what I'm talking about. I want to bring out the example of the understanding of a finite loss and an ambiguous loss. So what's an ambiguous loss? An ambiguous loss is a loss when you lose an entity of a person, but the person is still here. So the classic example is given, for example, chas v'shalom, somebody has Alzheimer's. The person is still physically here, and they might look good. Sometimes with people with Alzheimer's, they might look very good and very pleasant. But at the same time, what happens is the person is not there in their capacity. And if you ever seen a spouse who has to struggle with that, or a child, it's hard on them. It's not easy. They have to really adjust themselves. So how is the avodah different? When it comes to an ambiguous loss, the avodah that you have to do is to be resilient. And resilient basically means you have to have your best tools ready every single day and deal with the situation. It's not like, okay, I can distance myself more from it. And that's a very different experience. And by the way, with Corona now, with all the uncertainty, it's also an ambiguous loss. So it's hard to deal with it. I guess people get more used to it, the different things, but I'm just saying. So just to understand, it's coming back to the Niddah example, is it's a different structure, it's a different kind of experience. And sometimes a person has to allow themselves to feel that, because this is just what they're feeling. And then come up with the best tools and the best ways to connect. So I want to get to that now. What are some of the things that a person can do? And because my specialty is neuroscience, I'm going to take you through the brain. Okay, so hold on. And it's not as complicated as you think it is. And it's probably things that you're like, oh, that makes sense. You know, the Rebbe said that tracht gut wird sein gut. When you think positive, it has a positive effect. I want you to know that in the brain, when you have a positive thought, it does the same activity as an antidepressant. So what we think makes a big difference. Okay, so I'm going to take you through a little bit what, in case, I'm sure you heard about neurotransmitters, which are basically brain chemicals. And some of them slow you down, some of them speed you up, you know, whatever is needed. They give you energy or diminish the energy. So I know that you heard about, sorry, that you heard about dopamine. So in order to increase the dopamine in your brain to take care of yourself, okay, is what it's dopamine is sort of the reward chemical, okay? And what do? Different things. You can complete a task. So what I'm saying it to you is now, I'm going to give you a few more examples, but what I'm saying to you now is when you are feeling down and you're accepting your feelings like, hey, I don't like this, or this makes me anxious, or this, you know, whatever the feeling it is, because if it's a feeling that you kind of go with, then you probably don't need any of this and you can apply it to other situations as everybody else can do. But when you complete a task, it makes you feel good about yourself, okay? Doing any kind of self-care activity increases the dopamine in your brain. So you're just going to feel more accomplished. You're going to feel good. Believe it or not, eating food does that too. Okay. And celebrating something. Sometimes, you know, okay, we don't have something to think about ourselves, but maybe we can call up somebody who we know has, you know, accomplished something, or somebody that has, you know, a birthday and it's a big deal in their house, the birthdays and so on, different things. Somebody who's going to infuse any of this into us. We can do that also. It doesn't have to be exactly that you are doing it. Now, I'm going to get to the next neurotransmitter is oxytocin. Oxytocin, I'm sure you heard about that one. It's when a mother nurses a baby, that hormone gets released. It's only hormone it's actually a hormone and a neurotransmitter. It's the only hormone that actually has a nickname. It's called the love hormone. Okay. When people are connected, this is what they feel. And I want you to know that in a structure of loss, okay, I find it just so fascinating is when they did research, when somebody is near people and has a community and talks about a loss that they have, there's oxytocin receptors on the heart and they get activated. So no matter how difficult it is when you speak to somebody, that's actually a protective factor. And they found that it is not in health the problem how much stress you had, it is how you relate to it. In other words, if you have a good community, if you have good people to talk to, if you obviously take good care of yourself, but these things make a difference. They make more of a difference than your cholesterol at 50. I'm not trying to knock anybody's health. Okay, I also have high cholesterol, but that's genetic in my family. But I'm just saying like that, I'm not saying, but research shows us that that is a big predictor. And I want you to know for those ones who have, let's say, elderly parents or something, you know, a father who can go to Shachas Mincha Mariv to Shul and can go to Shiurim, even in an advanced age, that gives them so much life. Yes, and all the kids in the Eineklach and the Oreneklach and so on. And we can go on with a lot of examples, but you know them sort of for yourself. So just coming back to oxytocin is a hormone that gets released when we are connecting with one another. And that really makes a difference. So you cannot physically connect with your husband, but you can do it through other connections. Go play with your children, pick up a baby, your grandchildren, okay? Holding hands. You know, you can just take your kids around. That can be. Giving your kid a hug. It's not substituting the love that you have for your husband or what you're missing from your husband for giving it to your children. It's activating those hormones because you can take care of yourself. I want to also teach you something about a self-hug. And it's a cute thing, by the way, also that you can teach your kids. So what you can do is you can take your hands, I hope you can see, like you make you an L and you go under your shoulders, okay? And you're kind of like, you know, squeezing yourself into a self-hug. Now, what's so sophisticated about that? Okay. In the brain, everything that happens, a person remembers. You know, when the Rebbe said, you know, be careful what your child is listening to while the baby's in the stomach. Neuroscience will tell you the baby picks up what's in the stomach. I mean, I'm sorry, what sounds they hear and the different things, because everything creates pathways in the brain. And you actually know it from a practical example too. You know, you give a little baby who is 6 months old, you know, they can play with a rattle and they, you know, play and make noise. And when you give it back to them, they remember to do it. Not because they have an active memory that they can actually share about it, a declarative memory. No, because their brain remembers. That's how it is. And that's for everybody. So coming back to this hug, when you pick up a baby, how do you pick up a baby? Like this. Everybody, it's universal. It doesn't matter where you are. You pick up your baby like this. And that's very soothing. And that's very connecting. So when you do that to yourself, your body remembers. So it can be, sometimes that's what we need, or it can be helpful for somebody else that you need. Sometimes it can be very grounding if you do that, if you teach a child to do it. That can also be helpful. Now, one more with oxytocin, because I want to keep on time and really fast, is giving a compliment. Okay? By the way, if you want, I can give you a handout about this. You can email me after. It's Dr. Miriam Gross, Dr. Miriam Gross, all one word, Dr. Miriam Gross, MIRIAM GROSS, and you can just email me and I can give you the handout for this. Let me just go quick to 2 more things, okay? And then we'll open for questions. Endorphins are painkillers, okay? So laughing, hearing a comedy, hearing something fun. Some people are just really fun. And I just saw before, Abbe Perlmutter is doing something on Simcha. You know, those things make a difference. And you can take care of yourself. So sometimes when you feel down, you can take care of it. And then serotonin is the last one. I'm never going to quiz you on the names, but I know people have so much information today and they know that is more of sort of the mood stabilizer. Okay. So what that does, like if you can meditate a little bit. Now people think of meditating, sitting down and like, you know, this type of thing. For most people that really doesn't work well. It would be nice if it could work, but for most it doesn't. And when you tell somebody to relax, that has always the opposite effect. What you can do is you can disrupt your brain activity by focusing on something. It doesn't matter. It can be you're cooking. So on the smell of the food, on, you know, how does it sound, the food, believe it or not, when you pour down, when you pour into a cup, hot water or cold water, it has a different sound. So I'm just saying when you just for 1 second, okay, let me pay attention to 100% what I'm doing. What we call 100% paying attention means that what you are doing is you're using all your senses, your eyes, your ears, your sound, your smell, you know, to connect to what's going on. So I just gave you a few things. I'm looking at the time and that's why I'm rushing. I gave you a few things on how to take care of yourself. And the goal of it is not to just say, this is all my problems, so I'm going to take care of myself. No, the first step is you need to get clarity on what you're thinking, what you're feeling, how that is connected. And then comes the next step. If you need to, you can sit down with your husband during a time where it's calm and explain to him what you maybe need from him, but have clarity. Now, on a note, talking to the husbands, don't expect them to, like, oh yeah, sure, how do I do this, and all the different things. Just be simple and clear. Your husband doesn't even have to understand it. He just has to be a team partner. In a marriage, you don't need to 100% understand one another. It's just, I don't know how that is possible, but you have to connect on a certain level and you have to be a team. And that's really what is important. So you can do that. And the bottom line is give yourself time, little baby steps. If you're not getting anywhere, maybe it's a good time to talk to somebody, because somebody with an outside view can maybe see things that are going on. So I hope this was helpful and gave you some tips. And if anybody has any questions, please feel free. Kasi?
Yeah, we haven't had any questions come in yet. So I know you said you were rushing, but maybe you want to just give us a few more gems. I'll ask a question. You said in the beginning, clarify that feeling for yourself, work out what you're feeling, and then maybe find other ways of self-care to kind of help you. So can you elaborate? Are you then using self-care to take away those feelings? Are you saying self-care instead of the physical relationship with your husband? What can you do to actually build connection with your husband versus the self-care to feel better?
Okay, so when you identify what you really need, okay, then you can work with that, because the feeling is going to guide you. So if you're noticing that, hey, in my relationship, we're sort of, it's a little schwach on the end of connection. We're just, very much in line with the physical part, and that works for both of us, and it works really, really well, then maybe you need to move up in some steps in that connection, in some other steps. So that would be, maybe you spend some time taking a walk with your husband, if that's possible, and just simply talking to one another. Okay, maybe you have dinner twice a week together. You want to incorporate things that make sense. I say, what, it's really important to have date night. Date night is not there to solve problems. Date night, if possible, if you can't get out, you could even do it in the house. Date night is, I say, kishmaikeinu. When you were dating, you were talking to each other. Hopefully, that would make sense to me. That's why you got married, right? Talk to each other. If you have it on schedule, let's say every Wednesday or every other Wednesday, somehow it's going to happen, and you're going to talk to each other. And the relationship grows, because the bottom line is 10 years later, you're going to look back and 10 years passed. Okay. And this one did this and this one did that. And we did carpool, and we ran the kids here and we ran the kids there. And we did all these different kinds of things. And now we are 10 years further along, and we're 10 years older than what? And you know what? Miriam Swirlov once said something really funny years ago. She said that she went after 20 years, maybe you heard it, okay? But she went after 20 years with her husband because her sister made a simcha in Eretz Yisrael, and she said this was the first time she went with him herself. She says, I didn't even know I married such a nice guy. I get to talk to him. Yeah, it's hard to talk to one another when the house is full of children, Baruch Hashem, or even if not, it's pu'ulas. There's always things going on. If you don't make the time for it, it's not going to happen. So you want to check in with yourself. What talks to you in terms of connection with your husband? But it's usually spending time talking. You can play a game. You like to play Scrabble, whatever, come up with something.
Thank you. Okay, our next question here is, what do you do when you feel like your love language is quality time, and because there's no touch, it's so much harder to get him to spend the time? Like, for the husband, maybe the language is the physical touch. And since you have the quality time, but now you're Niddah, how do you get him on board? So it bothers me, as the questioner says, it bothers me that I feel like I need to beg for the attention.
Okay, so is really on how do you connect with your husband, which you mentioned in that question. So the first thing is figure out exactly what you want, which it sounds like you do, but make it practical, simple steps for your husband, okay? Nobody, not a husband, not children, they like to be lectured to. So I know we sit down with the spouse and we say, listen, this is how I connected. This is what I wanted, you know, and so on. And they're like tuning out because by the time you tell your husband, can we have a talk? He is already running for his life. And that's actually in many relationships. And that's not an indication that it's not a good relationship. What happens is come up with little steps and just sort of integrate it into relationship. So have, let's say, a little conversation or spend a little, oh, can we just take a 10-minute walk and, you know, do something? Oh, it changed over here. Okay, so I'm just saying in terms of that, do these different type of things. Think of examples, what you want from him. And instead of giving him a lecture, if that didn't work, which a lecture means simply a conversation. Okay, if that didn't work, just integrate it, because in real relationships, that's mostly how it works. You just integrate in little steps. And the fact that your husband doesn't get it or he doesn't do it, it's not really necessarily a problem of, you know, like, okay, he's not a good husband. What we call a good husband is maybe you can find a different way of integrating it. And also what I would do is, if it's not working, you can speak to somebody. They can maybe help you out, or maybe somebody can speak to your husband in different things in different levels. Sometimes it turns out that the husband is just so tired, he just doesn't want, you know, he's just like, I'm done for the day, you know, when I come home, I want to relax. Yeah.
Next question. What if the Niddah cycle really disrupts your feelings? You're together and in the mood, and then suddenly you can't, it's hard. But after some time, you get used to it. Like you get used to not being together and not in the mood of being together anymore. And then you're going to mikvah and you're feeling forced. So what happens if, let's say, maybe after a baby, it becomes a longer period of Niddah, a long enough time that you become used to that? Then what do you do?
Okay, so you want to identify where do those feelings come from? And like I'm going to stress that again. Sometimes it can be very benign things. You just not so good with transitions. You get used to it, and then the transition takes time for you to get back into it. So if you know that about yourself, then work with it accordingly. Meaning, in short, is what kind of preparation would you need? What kind of emotional preparation do you need for yourself? What kind of preparation do you need to let your husband know that that's what you need? Work with yourself. The blueprint is still the same. Identify what it is that you're feeling. And it's so individual. I just picked on like having a difficult time with transition. But it can be many different things. Maybe a person doesn't want to they're fearful that they're going to get pregnant. So that's something that needs to be addressed.
Okay. Sorry. Okay, thank you. How does talking about a feeling help it go away? Doesn't it accentuate it since you're admitting it? Even like if it doesn't have any base in truth or logic, by identifying the feeling, you're kind of giving it strength. What if discussing the feelings doesn't bring feelings of closeness, but the contrary, because it may prove or focus on his faults?
Okay, so these are actually two questions. So in terms of what's going on in the brain, in terms of, to oversimplify, on the right side of the brain are the emotions, on the left side of the brain is the language, and the parts of the brain where you make a decision is, like I said, the executive function gets right here up front where my shaitel is, okay? That you need to use your whole brain to make a decision. You don't want to use a half a brain. And really, when you think of it like this, think of a little kid when they are crying because the ice cream fell down. You acknowledge their feelings. Oh, your ice cream fell down and you're so upset, because in their eyes, they're 2 years old and they will never have any ice cream again. The vanilla ice cream is their favorite flavor, and that's it. Life came to an end. The second you acknowledge their feeling, all of a sudden the volume goes down. So what just happened? Your two brain, the right side and the left side of the brain talk to each other, and it actually slowed it. You have to name it to tame it. That's the rule. Okay. Now, what happens when, I'm sorry, I'm just going to say on that note, you probably have examples of your own life when this kind of thing happened, where you were talking about something, and you didn't have clarity and you had these feelings, and then you're talking to your friend about it. And all of a sudden, when you're saying it out loud, it's like, oh, I know, because your two parts of the brain are working together and it's working. Now, what happens is what happens if here's the second part of the question, when talking about it makes it worse. You know what? If talking about it makes it worse, meaning that there are things underneath that have to be sorted out. There are no tricks with it. If it's making it worse, something is going on that needs more attention. And you need to give it some time to work through. And once you have figured it out, then comes the all other part. Well, how do I bring this up to my husband? As a rule of thumb, don't bring anything up when there's an emotional time. And it sometimes seems so simple, but it's really tricky to figure out how to say it, because you are changing from power to influence. Power, not because you are the power in the relationship, is because you are kind of the step up. You're making the request, okay? And when a person makes a request, either it will be met or not, okay? But most relationships don't work with that. They work with influence, meaning that you have to kind of sift in what it is that you want. That's an art in itself of getting there. And get people who are good at it to help you out with it, because once you unlock that key, you'll know how to do it. Okay.
We have actually a ton of questions now, so I'm going to go through and say some
okay.
more. We'll see how many we can get through. Can you please explain what you meant by journaling before mikvah? It's one part. And then part two would be, how are we conveying our feelings to our husband if our feelings are that we're missing him and that Niddah is uncomfortable?
Okay. So in terms of what I mentioned about journaling for mikveh, okay, if journaling brings out a lot of feelings and that are going to be stressful for you, then don't do it right before mikveh, because it might affect negatively your emotional part of the relationship with your husband. Because I don't know what's going on in everybody's heart, and I don't know what's going on in everybody's relationship. So what I just said is pay attention. If it's going to be too much for you, and then I'm stressed out, I was just journaling and there's so much that came up for me, then that's not going to be pleasant for you to go to the mikveh, or you're not going to be calm when you come back. So just pay attention to that part, okay? Now, the second part was, how do you relate? How do you relate to your husband?
Well, you're like, if you're acknowledging that you're feeling is that you're simply uncomfortable, right, like it's Niddah time. So how are you conveying that to him? Oh, I miss you. What are you actually saying?
Okay, so for that part, I would say sit down, especially during a time where you're not Niddah. Okay, you know what the feelings are that are going to come up. Yeah, there's something in the background, but you know what the feelings are that might come up for you. And come up with a lashon or different things that you can do, that you and your husband can do for each other, that is going to still kindle that relationship, but it's going to be within the framework that's halachically appropriate. So it's so individual, but you need to figure that one out.
Okay, thank you. Next question. During the cell phone age, how do you subtly and respectfully remove the phone from being a disruptive part of the marriage? So specifically in this context, I would say that if you're trying to build a connection during the Niddah time and you realize that maybe you're busy and the phone is playing part of it, how can you address that respectfully?
Okay. First, you need to know for yourself, okay? Anything that you address, anything new, do it in baby steps. And your approach should be, I'm starting with the one that's most likely going to be acceptable or being accepted by my husband. So if your husband is the type of guy that you can ask him when he comes home for the, you know, whatever, to eat dinner together with the family, and we're going to make a rule that during dinner there's no phones by the table. If you know your husband, if this is something that has a high likelihood of working, then do that. Okay. If this is something that's guaranteed not to work, don't do it. Come up with something that is going to make most sense that can be introduced. So what happens if your husband is a phone, and we're blaming the husband, but you know, this is for the example purposes, poor guy. Okay. He has his phone tied by the hip. He just doesn't leave it. It doesn't matter where he goes. You know, maybe you start with 5 minutes. You know what? 5 minutes. I don't care. Play Scrabble, do any activity that he is willing to do with you. And or that you kind of anyhow do together and say, listen, give me 5 minutes. 5 minutes, you can do 5 minutes. You know how.
Hi, this is Vega from the Kinus office. Now is 11:01, and we need to finish. But if you'd like to continue, I can make you the host, and you can, as long as when you finish, you just press end meeting for all. Would you like that?
Yes, sure. Thank you. Okay. Yeah, we're
Okay.
going to close up within 5 minutes. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, it's fine. I'm just going to go, but one of you, who
Great.
would you like me
Make
to
me
make
the
the
host
host?
and I'll end it, okay?
Right.
Mrs.
Yeah.
Rifkin or?
Yes. Thank you. I'll close it in 5 minutes. All
Okay,
right.
great.
Okay, great. Dr. Gross, if you were just the middle of your
Sorry for
sentence.
interrupting.
Okay.
Sorry for interrupting.
Right.
Thank you. You said that give me 5 minutes. That's where you were up to.
Right. Yeah. So give me 5 minutes. Like I'm saying, like if with the cell phone example, you know, if you can't get anything, try to get the smallest amount possible that maybe could work, and do it at a time that makes the most sense. So, you know, if it's 5 minutes before you go to sleep, 5 minutes in the morning, whatever it is. I just came up with the idea of 5 minutes, but you can do it when there's a certain activity that's going on in the house. So there's a lot of thinking, and there's a lot of, it's also personal and individual, that I hope it can get you going in the way of how to think about it. And that was really my goal. So you can start applying it in some way to your own relationship.
All right, what happens? This is going to be our last question. I know we all want to keep on going, and Dr. Gross, we can hear you for a really long time, and I thank you so much for being with us today. We have 1 or 2 more questions, and then we are going to wrap up. What happens when you are met with a husband who doesn't want to be a team player? As much as you work on yourself, he's just burnt out from years of different situations. Now you're working and he's holding back.
That's a marital problem. It's not a mikveh problem. Speak to somebody. I'm sorry to be so blunt and so short. Like I said, I come from Europe. We don't beat around the bush. So I tell this to my clients. I said, I say it the way it is. It's a marital problem. It's not something that, you know, you can take kind of a little trick right now and say, okay, this is what we're going to do. You know, there's more thoughts that need to be taken into account. And for the most part, I would say that most relationships can be made better, even if only one person goes for therapy or speak to somebody that understands those type of issues in a relationship.
Okay, so thank you. We actually went through all the questions now at this point. So
Okay.
I'm glad that this way we're able to be on time. Everybody enjoy the banquet today. Dr. Gross, thank you so much for your expertise. Remember, if you'd like the handout, you're welcome to contact Dr. Gross at drmiriamgross@gmail.com. On behalf of mikvah.org, I thank you all for joining us today, and everyone take the moment to build your relationships in the best way. Dr. Gross, you were amazing. Thank you so much, everybody, and have a wonderful day.
You too, and thank you for the opportunity. And much hatzlacha. And if you have any more questions, then feel free to email me, or you can call me. It's no problem.
You want to say your phone number? You want to say your phone number? Okay.
347. Maybe you want to put it down. It's 347 770 3635. That's 347 770 3635. And if I don't pick up, please leave a voicemail and I get back to you. Okay?
All right,
All
thank
right.
you, Dr. Gross. Have a great
Thank
day,
you.
everybody.
You too. Thank you. Sage gesund. Macht Hatzlache.